It seems we have seen the last of the Hardy Boys tag team in WWE after the departure of Matt Hardy last weekend, but there's still one Hardy Boy under Vince's control. Jeff Hardy has been out of action since just after WrestleMania 35 last year, when he suffered a knee injury shortly after winning the SmackDown tag team titles from the Usos on the SmackDown after WrestleMania. The knee injury in and of itself wasn't particularly serious, but Jeff would go on to be arrested for alcohol-related offenses, and his return has been significantly delayed. Very little was known about Jeff's time away from the ring until he appeared on WWE Backstage this past week, where he revealed he had been in rehab for much of his time away, telling Renee Young, "On the night of October the 3rd, I got into some trouble. The morning of October the 4th, I arranged for me to go to inpatient rehab for the first time in my life. It was one of the best things I could have ever done for myself, and I've done something every day to better myself." He also revealed that he has now been cleared to return to the ring, pending creative having something for him, and it looks as though this may have happened as Jeff has been spotted backstage at both of the past two SmackDown tapings. PW Insider reports that Jeff was at last night's SmackDown in Buffalo, New York, and the thought is that he'll be returning very soon, most likely in order to start some kind of program ahead of WrestleMania. Now that Matt is gone, it's very likely that Jeff will be pushed as a single star, probably somewhere in the upper mid-card. While he can't move quite like he could 10 or even 20 years ago, he's still very much a crowd favorite and will be immediately over when he does eventually return. Hopefully he's able to stay away from the mid-card vortex, because a 10-week feud between Jeff Hardy and Baron Corbin is not something I need to see, but I am terrified that I'll have to anyway. Onto some slightly more concerning news now, as it was reported after last night's Impact tapings that WWE and WCW legend Scott Steiner had been rushed to hospital in a serious condition after collapsing backstage. Sean Ross Sapp originally reported that things were looking rough for Steiner, and that we should keep him in our thoughts, tweeting, "Things are looking rough for Scott Steiner. He was rushed to the hospital after collapsing at Impact while doing pre-tapes." And I don't want to go into much more detail beyond that, but keep him in your thoughts. Thankfully, it appears that Steiner has made somewhat of a recovery since those initial tweets, as Steiner is reportedly in a stable condition in hospital and on the road to recovery. Impact Wrestling executive Scott D'Amore took to Twitter to assure fans that Steiner was doing okay, tweeting, "For all concerned parties, Scott Steiner is okay. His family is grateful for everybody's concern and support." Friend of Steiner and former WWE and ECW star Tommy Dreamer then updated the situation further, tweeting, "I'm at the hospital right now with Scott D'Amore and Joey Ryan. Scott Steiner is doing well and under great care. Say a prayer for Big Papa Pump, holla if you hear me." So hopefully this means that Steiner isn't in any kind of life-threatening condition, which is fantastic to hear. At 57, Steiner is likely nearing the end of his wrestling career, but he is still very much active in Impact and on the Indies, so hopefully this doesn't bring his career to an early end. He is best remembered by fans for his run in WCW during the 90s. After Vince McMahon bought WCW, Steiner would have a brief run in WWE before leaving in 2004 to join TNA. Everyone at WrestleTalk would like to send our best wishes to Scott and his friends and family. Before we get into a review of SmackDown, a massive thank you to Paul E. Dangerously Jarman for being an awesome pledgehammer on Patreon. And now it's time for a review of last night's episode of Friday Night SmackDown, the go-home show for Elimination Chamber, in about 5 minutes. The show opened with a video recap of the John Cena Fiend segment from last week, which is still really stupid, before the main show opens up with a moment of bliss. Alexa and Nikki bring out the NWO, but without Hulk Hogan for some reason, and they have a really awkward interview before mercifully being interrupted by our Lord and Savior, Sami Zayn et al. The three of them talk about how WWE need to stop focusing on their past and start thinking about the future. I'm just gonna leave this picture of Goldberg here for absolutely no reason. They tease getting into a fight before backing off, which brings out Braun Strowman. He beats up Cesaro and Nakamura, and then Sami gets cornered, using Bliss as a human shield to escape. This didn't particularly make me any more excited for Sunday. Up next was a rematch from last week of Naomi and Lacey Evans versus Sasha Banks and Bayley. Why was this a rematch? Reasons, I guess. Lacey was the one being beaten down in this match before a triumphant Naomi hot tag, which was then stopped when Bayley interfered with her split-legged moonsault, allowing Sasha Banks to hit the double knee splatty thing she does for the win. So Naomi beat Bayley last week with a roll-up, and this week Sasha pins Naomi? 50-50 booking. After a backstage promo with The New Day where Big E must have taken something extra unusual to what he normally does, Bayley and Banks are backstage saying that they've beaten everyone. They're better than the Bellas. They've beaten Carmella, Naomi, Lacey Evans. They're great. What is this leading to? I have no idea. Up next, it's Sheamus versus Apollo Crews. And before the match, Apollo rejects Shorty G's offer of help against Sheamus, which he probably should have taken because he lost very quickly to a bro kick. Is Apollo turning heel on Shorty G? Drew Gulak is backstage next, and Drake Maverick comes up and says he wants to fight Daniel Bryan, before Bryan comes in too and tells Gulak that if he's so sure about Bryan's weaknesses, then maybe they should fight on Sunday at Elimination Chamber. I'd like that. Up next, it's another women's tag match with Carmella and Dana Brooke versus Fire and Desire. Dolph Ziggler accompanied Fire and Desire out to the ring, which Mandy looked like she didn't know was happening. This played in wonderfully to the match as Ziggler caused a distraction and allowed Mandy to hit the running knee on an unsuspecting Dana Brooke for the win. Poor Otis. But now it's time for my favorite thing on the show, the Firefly Funhouse. All the pictures in the Funhouse have been changed to pictures of Cena, and Bray turns around and says, "You may ask, why Cena?" Before Ramblin' Rabbit interrupts and says he knows why. It's because John Cena beat you at WrestleMania 6 years ago, leading to a downward spiral in both your professional and personal life. Bray just responds with, yowie wowie, before going on to say that time can either hurt or heal you, and if it wasn't for Cena, the Funhouse wouldn't exist, so he forgives him. But something Cena also helped create was the Fiend. Fueled by vengeance, driven by pain, he is waiting at WrestleMania, and unlike Bray, he is not so forgiving. Life is a circle. No matter what beast you make of yourself or how bright one side is, the dark side inevitably comes round again. That's the beauty of a circle. Round and round we go. I thought this was absolutely phenomenal stuff. While the declaration of the match last week was lame, this has made me jump right back on the bandwagon of excitement for this match. I could talk about why I love this promo for an hour, but I won't. What I will say though is that it was perfectly done to encapsulate Wyatt's trajectory as a character, giving him legitimate grievances with Cena, but it also blurs the lines of reality, with him actually entering that downward professional and personal spiral after that loss at WrestleMania to Cena at WrestleMania 30. Plus, when he delivered the promo, he spoke in a much more normal tone, instead of either end of the spectrum when he's doing Funhouse Bray or Fiend Bray. This felt like the man behind Bray Wyatt talking to us. This felt like Wyndham Rotunda talking to us. This was fantastic. But then after that, we get a video recap of Goldberg and Reigns' WrestleMania announcement, which is still really bad. Baron Corbin is backstage and says that he and Reigns are finished. Wait, no, that can't be right. What did he just say? He said that he and Reigns are finished? It's been 3,000 years. And we have been waiting for this day. Corbin and Reigns are no longer feuding. Praise be to those in higher power, for they are merciful. Anyway, Corbin is doing an interview before being interrupted by Elias's guitar. Corbin runs down Elias before walking off. Hey, remember when they were friends in the mid-card vortex? Good times. Good times. Backstage, it's heavy machinery, and despite Tucker's best efforts to stop him doing so, Otis approaches Mandy Rose and apologizes for Valentine's Day. But she says it's too late. A woman doesn't like to be stood up like that, and walks off. It's okay, Otis, I still love you. And then it was time for the main event, a tag team gauntlet match to determine who would be entering the tag team elimination chamber match last. Up first was The New Day versus Heavy Machinery, and after a solid back and forth, Heavy Machinery just won. They pinned Big E off a compactor. Well, okay then. Out next was the Lucha House Party, and after quite a bit of time, Otis pinned Lince Dorado off the Caterpillar. Up next was the Usos, and after a couple of minutes of the Usos in control, Tucker randomly rolls up one of the Usos in a crucifix pin and just pins him clean. Okay then. After that, it was Miz and Morrison's turn, and again, after a while of Miz and Morrison beating them down, Tucker got a schoolboy roll-up pin on Miz for the win. Miz and Morrison cannot buy a win after they won the titles. They beat up both of them after they lose and put Otis through the barricade. This, of course, then leads to the final entrance in the gauntlet match, Rude and Ziggler. They beat down on Tucker while Otis is still on the outside, but as he slowly starts to get to his feet, the crowd come alive. He finally gets the hot tag in and runs wild, but Ziggler makes a hot tag in that Otis doesn't see. So when Otis winds up for the caterpillar, he's on the receiving end of a super kick and Ziggler pins him for the win. This was a wonderful story for Heavy Machinery, and I am really looking forward to Otis attempting to get his hands on Ziggler inside the chamber, but man, I just feel really bad for the New Day Usos and Miz and Morrison. I felt like there could have been maybe some more creative ways for Heavy Machinery to win against some of those teams, considering they haven't really been pushed as a legitimate tag team threat recently, but it was still a very fun story. So that was the show. Vote in the poll by pressing the eye above my head and casting your vote, where you can choose from the options on screen now. I thought this was a fine episode of SmackDown. It's much better than what we've had recently, and I'm really into The Fiend versus John Cena. But I'm just feeling that, with the exception of that feud, there's not really any WrestleMania caliber feuds being built. Perhaps they're saving themselves until after this Sunday, so hopefully next week's SmackDown is when things will kick up a gear for WrestleMania season. This SmackDown gets a high smack bang in the middle. Vince McMahon is already souring on Shayna Baszler. Press the video to the right to find out more, and episode 2 of No Rolls Barred is going up on YouTube tomorrow, so watch episode 1 right now if you haven't seen it already by pressing the video below that. It's awesome. A special thank you to our pledge hammers on Patreon, some of whom you can see scrolling below me right now. I've been Chopper Pete Quinnell, and that was wrestling.